Hey, Run Try Bike community. Welcome to a special Fireside Chat on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network by us, Run Try Bike. We will be talking to Alexander Häberlin today, who is one of the co-founders of No Normal Coffee. Now, you may have seen it on our feed over the past couple of months. No Normal Coffee is basically coffee that is in paste-like form that comes in a tube. I find it to be an amazing product, and I cannot wait to talk to Alexander about how he came about with this concept, what it looks like for today and into the future, and what other customers are saying besides me, because I absolutely love it. But before we bring Alex onto the show, please remember to subscribe, rate, review the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network on your favorite podcast platform. We have 9 shows on the platform, which means there's something for everybody, where we go from talking about Q&A conversations to food to music to having laughs and sometimes serious conversations like on our Enduring Minds show. So make sure you go to your favorite podcast platform, subscribe, rate, review, and if you're using Spotify, you can now comment on each episode. We really appreciate you taking the time to do so, as that helps us to continue to keep the network moving forward and share these amazing stories and amazing products like No Normal Coffee with you. So without me rambling on any longer, let me bring Alexander forward and let's discuss his product, No Normal Coffee. Hey, Alexander, how are you?
Hi, Jason. Hi, great. Great to be on the show.
Thanks for joining me. For me, it's super early, but I know it's 4-ish or 5 o'clock-ish where you are in Switzerland. And how many cups of coffee have you had today?
That's a good question. I would say about 2, so not too
Okay.
bad. I actually was thinking about getting a third right now, but then I decided against it.
So we normally have an icebreaker question on our Fireside Chat that deals with pizza, but I'm going to ask you a coffee question. So for you, the perfect cup of coffee is what? Is it black coffee, latte?
I would say the perfect cup of coffee really depends on where and how I want to drink that coffee. And that's really what our product also kind of pays into. So if I did a 4-hour hike and I'm sitting at the peak of a mountain, I want a different coffee than, for example, at the beach or at
Yeah.
the office. So let's maybe go into the one on the mountain on the peak of the mountain. There, I want a really strong coffee, which is easy to prepare and is slightly sweetened, and that's kind of also where our product originated from.
Yeah, so I want to jump into the product. So I came in contact with you because I heard you on Adam Lee's Community Trail Running podcast. And I vividly remember this, Alex. I had just dropped my wife off at her job, and I was driving home and I put the podcast episode on, and you started talking about coffee as a paste in a tube, and my eyes lit up. And I said to myself, as soon as I get home, I need to reach out to Adam and ask him to connect me to you because A, I had never heard of such a thing. And B, I was like, how do I get my hands on it to test this out? And you were kind enough actually, Adam was kind enough to connect us. And then you were kind enough to say yes to having a conversation. So let's give the audience an idea of what exactly No Normal Coffee is. And then we can talk about the origins of it. So I can describe it, but I'd rather you describe it for our audience, since you obviously are the one who came up with the concept.
Yeah, so like you said, it's fairly straightforward when it comes to the idea. It's coffee to tube. In Swiss German, it's Kaffee aus der Tube. And it sounds really quirky and fun, especially in Swiss German. But the idea, I think maybe I'll go to where the idea originated, and then you really understand like why we decided to develop it as this. So Philippe, my co-founder, and myself are really old childhood friends, which spent like a ton of time outdoors, skiing, hiking, camping, you name it. And coffee was a really essential part of those experiences, where we even sometimes planned our routes based on where we'll drink coffee. Saying like, oh, that's a great coffee spot. We have to walk through there because then we can have a great view, whatnot. And Philip used to always go with his instant coffee sticks, the Nescafes or the Starbucks. And I used to take kind of half my kitchen with me. I have the grinder, the beans, and the older we got, the more relevant weight got. I don't know. It was connected to the fact that we got less fitter or more aware of what we're carrying with us. But so Philip used to always complain when he had to prepare his coffee and drink it, and I was complaining all the way up to there because of the weight. So 2 years ago, we kind of brainstormed during a hike, and we're like, okay, is there any way we can solve this problem? I mean, it has to be solvable. I'm sure we're not the only ones who has this issue. And at that time, I was trying out coffee concentrates, which are actually in Europe not really a thing, but in the US actually pretty big. And I was really surprised about how good they tasted. Um, However, you would need to refrigerate them once opened. They would very often come in a glass bottle, so also not really ideal to kind of go on a hike. So I was like talking to Philip, like, "Hey, can we make this kind of portable?" And then he just like said it like coffee is the tube, which is coffee in a tube. And in that moment, I was like, "What? You know, huh? Why?" And he's like, "Well, I mean, the tube is like a super portable product format. It makes the product in general last forever, and it's fully recyclable, and it's definitely proven over time that it works because the form factor is like 100 years old, maybe probably longer." And that we're like, okay, let's kind of think this through. How would this work? And blah blah blah. And then after kind of a 4 hour hike, we were so hyped about the idea, and we were like, okay, but we're probably gonna get home and Google it and figure out that like 100 other people are already doing this. But we Googled it and we Googled it and we Googled it, and it just didn't show up anywhere. So nobody was doing this anywhere. And we really decided there and then, okay, I guess we have to do this.
Before you go any further, so as you're Googling and Googling and Googling, is the excitement for this product, like, is it growing? Or are you now asking yourself, like, maybe we're on the wrong track if nobody else has done this?
Yeah, I mean, the excitement was growing, but also kind of the fear of like, is it maybe not possible? Is it maybe not just possible to put it in a tube? Maybe it's not possible to kind of emulsify it to a paste, whatever. And also after kind of experimenting in our kitchens and kind of destroying all our kitchen machines, we also was started to get a bit critical, like, oh, maybe doesn't work, because we just had no idea, how to kind of do it. It mostly ended in some kind of coffee pudding or coffee gel or whatever. But yeah, it's we're here now, and it seems to work.
So is your background in Philip's background in food science? Like, how are you deciding to ruin all of your kitchen, products and coming up with coffee pudding or coffee gel before you land on the paste?
I think if both of us would either have a background in food or in coffee, we probably wouldn't have started this. And I think that's also the reason why none of the big brands have started it, because it sounds so absurd when you first say it, but when you think it through, it actually makes a lot of sense. So we were just really naive and just said, like, let's try it. And we found, so our backgrounds, maybe to your question, our backgrounds, so mine is in product design. So I worked quite a lot in like agency environments for industrial design, brand strategy. And Philip has a long sales and advertisement background. He was for a long time in Africa. And so we have like a really broad kind of experience. Yeah, but then to the point where we didn't have the know-how to kind of develop a product, we were like, okay, we have no idea how to do this. Like, who does? And out of like many coincidences, a friend of a friend told us, hey, there's actually an agency in Zurich which helps you develop food products. So you can basically go to them and say, like, I have this idea. And like 3 months later, you come back and you pick up a prototype, basically. And that's basically what we did. And so after 3 months, we had a prototype in our hands. And I mean, you can imagine the excitement. It wasn't perfect, by far not, but it was kind of a proof of concept that, like, okay, a paste in a tube dissolves in water and then results in coffee works.
What was the taste of the very first product you got from the food kitchen?
It wasn't, well, so our sample was terrible. Their sample was okay-ish. I mean, it was more like they just took like whatever coffee they would find just to kind of prove that the mixing it and preparing it would work. But the funny, maybe a little fun story to that first, or like that meeting when we got the prototype was, so we get there, Philip and I are mega excited. We had to wait 3 months and put quite a lot of our own private money into this project. And they called us and said like, hey, we have a prototype. Do you want to come by and test it? And we were like, what? So we get there, we test it. It tastes like surprisingly good for the first prototype. And then Philippe has I think he had like a Cliff Bar or something with him. And then he looks over to me and like, do you think we can just like eat this? And I was like, I don't know, let's try it, And then we kind of got like a banana, we got like chocolate bars, and we tried it on everything, and we were like, dude, this is really good, So it's not just drinkable, so you can also eat it as a paste. And we're like, wow, that's like, are we maybe the first coffee in the world you can eat? So yeah, that's also how the whole edible aspect came around. And some people absolutely love the fact that you can eat it, and some people are like, you must be mad.
I love the fact that this is like the story of the naive entrepreneur who doesn't know if you could do this, and then the accidental growth of a product because you're like, wait, can we eat this? Right. And I think that's the reality of being an entrepreneur is you have an idea, and then one day you're like, but what if we tried this? And but what if we tried that? And so how do you come to where you are today, where it's a dark roast, it's sweet? I love it, by the way, Alex. Like, I absolutely love
Nice.
it. I've recorded videos. I've taken it with me on trips. So instead of using the little pod in the hotel room, I brought the product with me. We have a product coming out where we talk. I actually blend it with one of our other marketing partners, Seven Summit Snacks, and their mint chocolate to make a mint
Nice.
latte. It's fantastic.
Nice.
But yeah, so how do you get to the point where this is the flavor that you think is the flavor that you want to essentially mass produce and sell to the market?
Yeah. So, I mean, there were obviously quite a few steps involved between that meeting and us basically selling our first product. But to kind of make a long story short, we said, okay, so the first flavor needs to be a crowd pleaser. Like, we can't launch with like a single origin, super fruity, crazy coffee. We have to kind of launch a crowd pleaser. And we call it the outdoor coffee. So it has to work outdoors. And we kind of both like really dark roasted coffee for some reason. So we just said like, look, actually this first product is for us. So let's just make it perfect for us because we don't know any better right now. And then at the end of, so we found a supplier. They did about 15 iterations of the recipe. And at the very end, we had like 4 versions of the last iteration, and we just couldn't decide which one it should be. We're not coffee, how do you say, coffee experts, which taste every single detail. We're like, they're all kind of good, but we're not really sure. And 2 of them were sweetened and 2 of them were unsweetened. So we're like, you know what? We always talk about the outdoors. Why don't we do like a proper like hike, take all the, variations with us, test them all, and then decide at the peak, basically. So we took them out. We did a really nice hike in the French part of Switzerland, and at about 2,500 meters altitude, we tested all of them after like a 4-hour hike, and one just like was so much better than all of them, and it was sweetened just because in that moment we were craving energy. Yeah. We were craving carbs, and so we drinked it and we put it on the banana. We were like, okay, this is by far the winner. And that's basically how the first flavor came across. And with that flavor, we then also went and did a crowdfund in Switzerland on this really small crowdfunding platform, just to kind of, before putting all of our money into this, let's see if people actually want to buy it. So we did the crowdfund project, and we actually, I have a sample here. It's kind of funny side story. You just stop me if I'm talking too much, yeah?
No, keep going. I love it. I love hearing entrepreneurial stories.
This is a hand-painted tube. This used to be tomato paste, and we just kind of painted it black and sticked our logo on it. And this is the tube we used for the crowdfunding video. So we're actually like squeezing around like tomato paste in the video, but it's actually, and that's what we used because we didn't have the product yet. It was just basically a recipe and a prototype. So we did
Which, by
that,
the way, it
and
looks exactly like the
it looks
actual
really similar.
product
I was
today.
I was
Yeah.
really proud of that. um, and the crowdfunding went surprisingly well, and it got picked up by a few food bloggers in the US. And most of the orders also came from the US, which was pretty wild because we were on this tiny crowdfunding platform in Switzerland, which basically only gets Swiss traffic. And we raised enough money to pay for our first production. And that was also kind of for us a proof of concept, like, okay, people seem to really be interested in this, and we got a lot of hype on Instagram and a lot of hype on Twitter and whatnot. So that was like, for us, it was like, okay, I think we're onto something. And after getting that money, we went into production, and we fulfilled those orders in June last year, which sounds actually pretty wild to me because it seems like forever ago.
Yeah, and thank you for bringing it
Um,
up, because I know
yeah,
that you guys literally just got started, right? So you're less than a year old, and I want people to understand, right? So you have this idea at the top of a mountain, at the end of a hike. You go to a company who can make it for you. It takes them 3 months to get to a product. You
yeah,
tinker with it. You go back to the top of the mountain, test it out, and now you go to market, and in less than a year, right? We're a month shy of a year, basically. You have a product that you are selling. That seems really fast. Does
yeah.
it feel fast for you, or was it one of those, we got to get this out there because this is a great idea and we don't want somebody else to be a first market mover over us since we've put time into this?
I think it wasn't that much about being scared about competition. It was more, Philip and I are by nature very impatient. So we just wanted to kick this off as fast as possible. And we went to the supplier and said, like, okay, I think it was like October. And it was like, we want to launch in January. And they were like, what? Are you crazy? No, that's not possible. But with that attitude, they would have said, okay, it's going to take like 7 months to do this. And
Right.
we said, we wanted it done in 2 months. So they said, okay, we can maybe do it in five. So I think that's the attitude we had throughout the process. And that's why kind of we were able to push it forwards pretty quickly. But there was a lot of coincidences, let's say, and luck in finding the supplier fairly fast, the supplier being interested in actually working with us, the recipe kind of actually working as we imagined it to be, the buzz we got through these influencers. There was a lot of like things that happened that kind of made everything speed up. But yeah, I think it's all kind of due to the fact that Philip and I are very impatient.
Have there been moments along this journey from concept to market where you've looked at Philip, or Philip has looked at you and have said, "This is crazy. This didn't work. This was bad." The valleys that entrepreneurs can fall into, right? Because something didn't work right, a supplier didn't provide something,
Mm,
funding didn't go somewhere, whatever it might be. Were there moments along this path, and then you just thought, "No, but this is a good product. I know we can make it work."
yeah. So I think the biggest fans of this product is Philip and I, which is essential, I think, for us kind of pushing this forward. Obviously, it's a product that gets people very engaged, in the sense people either love it or they hate it, and they will express their emotions in both scenarios. So I was just going like, I go through sometimes our Facebook comments and whatnot, and people like literally lose their mind when they see this. They're like, "Are you insane? This is the stupidest thing ever," blah blah blah. So people really like get really emotional about it. And of course, sometimes you read this stuff and you're like, "Whoa, like I don't know if we're doing the right thing here," because people seem to like really get pissed off about it. But then on the other side, you have so many more people that absolutely love it and write us on a daily basis, like, "Oh, this really is solving my coffee problem on my hikes," and blah blah blah. And so we're getting both. But of course, you have days where you just like especially when people like leave reviews on your website and kind of pulls down your entire rating. You're like, come on, like,
Yeah.
really, you know. Um, but no, it's been a really positive experience. I have to say, there's obviously ups and downs, but there was more ups to date.
So we're like we said about a year into the business. Thoughts on new formulas for new tastes, maybe going back to what you originally said, which was we can't have it single sourced and fruity and all these things. We need to make it for the mass market. Now
Yeah.
that you have proof of concept, it's successful, you guys are moving forward. Are you now starting to look at how do we now adjust the product and create another flavor or another couple of flavors?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's various ways we could go, in the sense of we could go like full into the coffee lane, saying like, okay, we do different roast levels, we do different origins, we do like limited edition from this one farmer in Guatemala or whatever. But we decided to kind of stay kind of an uncomplicated coffee solution, because there's enough. If you want like a specialty coffee, there's more than enough alternatives you can get, but you won't be able to take that specialty coffee up on a mountain. And I think that's where we come in with uncomplicated coffee solutions you can take wherever you go. And therefore, for us, the obvious next flavor is sugar free.
Mm-hmm.
It's just been over all platforms, like the major feedback has been like, hey, we love this, but sugar free would be nice. And then we had like about 6 flavor ideas to follow up with this. So we did a survey about a month ago with our subscribers, and the picture was fairly clear. We got about 650 people participating in the survey, and yeah, it's I can already say that sugar free is going to be the next flavor. But from there, like anything is possible. We can go down the flavor lane, saying like there might be like milk, or there might be like chocolate, or there might be like hazelnuts, or maybe we really go down the coffee lane and say like, okay, you know what, we're going to bring out a light roast. And like there's we I don't want to cancel out anything right now. And also, Philip and I, being the impatient guys we are, we have to be careful not to kind of want to do everything. We're also like, oh, but we could also do like other products other than coffee. Like, no, like we really got something here. Let's like kind of double down on this. And based on the questionnaire, the feedback was also like, hey, give us smaller tubes. Like I'm an ultra runner. I want to take this on an ultra run. Like make a five portion or even a single portion format. So that's definitely something we're looking at, and it also totally makes sense.
I could see in 12 months from now, we're having a conversation and you've got like a wall behind you of all the different options because you guys are so impatient.
I hope not. I hope not. I really hope we focus. Focus is everything in this stage.
It's funny. I wrote down the name Simon Sinek. I don't know if you've
Yeah,
heard of him.
sure.
Have you seen his TED talk about Start With Why?
Yeah.
So when you said, we do this for the outdoors and for hiking, it reminded me of that scenario in which, that's your why for having created this company, and keeping your vision and focus on that why will help you determine, okay, so today is sugar free. And
Mm.
then, let's see how that works. And then 6 months, 12 months from now, it's whatever else might come down the road. But it's not, let's do 97 variations because one person on TikTok said, hey, can you make this one particular type of product, and you rush to market for it. I applaud you for being patient in that sense, even though you
Yeah.
describe yourself as being impatient.
Yeah, and talking about the why, I think our why is very much about kind of enabling people to do the adventures they want to do, and having a coffee solution that adapts to their needs, and not vice versa. I don't have to change my adventure because my coffee solution requires a flat surface and hot water and whatever. It should be the other way around, and that's kind of really what we're kind of trying to double down on. So yeah, it makes total sense.
Over there, since we've been working with you guys for about 60 days, 70 days, we have gotten so many emails. So I can imagine the amount of information that you guys are getting in
Yeah.
on your end. The biggest question we get is, does it taste good? Now, you as the founder is going to always say yes, right? Like that's, of course it does. I created the product. And for me, I always say yes too, because I really do like it. And I drink it black. I will also make a latte out of it, like I said earlier. So it's very versatile in
Mm.
the different types of coffee you can also make. What are some of the questions that you're getting that people are inquisitive about when it comes to the product? Is it, why a paste, why a tube? Like, what are questions you face?
So yeah, the taste one is definitely something that comes up a lot, and people are a bit, because it's a completely new form factor. People are a bit like unsure, but the fact that we're using coffee concentrate and not freeze dried or spray dried coffee like instant does is already quite a good indicator that it will taste good.
Mm-hmm.
Just because we brew the coffee and then extract the water and don't go through like these super process intense processes like freeze or spray drying where you lose a lot of the good stuff of the coffee. So that's a really good indicator. That's also, I don't say like, of course it tastes good. It tastes amazing. I go, just kind of give them reasons why it could taste good for them, because at the end of the day, coffee, everybody likes their coffee differently. And some people love instant coffee, and that's totally fine. And that's also kind of what we're communicating is like, look, taste is subjective to anybody, and
Correct.
you might love your taste, the coffee the way it is, and this is just one way you can go for it. And if you like it, great. If you don't, fine for us. But other questions are very often connected to shelf life. So, like, how long will it last? And that's really cool with our product. We at the moment we have 12 months, and the next batch will be 18 months, which is great, and it lasts really, really long unrefrigerated. Also, once opened, you can keep it very, very long. Like we have to, we wanted to write 2 weeks just because, you know, you never know how people store their products. If
Right.
you leave it open lying in the sun for 2 weeks, not the best. But if you store it like more or less in a normal kind of place, it will last very long, even open. So that's something that people really seem to care about, especially with this product. Weight, you know, you have the ultralight hikers that really want to know exactly how many grams they will take with them. The fact, why is there sugar inside? Some people think it's because of preservation, but it's really not. It's really just kind of energy source from our perspective. And yeah, that's pretty much it. They're kind of asking about new flavors, new sizes, and then a lot is about like more like back end stuff, like when's my order arriving, or that kind of stuff.
I think the one thing that you didn't touch on, which I think is a really important asset for you guys, is that when it comes to a cup of coffee, it's cheap.
Yeah,
It's cheap. It's $1 a cup of coffee, right? Like you're not going to any coffee shop in America, at least, and getting a cup of coffee for less than $1. And the other thing for me, and I'm known for this, like without a doubt, once a week, once every 2 weeks, there are coffee grounds all over my kitchen because I accidentally knock over the canister, or when I'm making an espresso, when I go to pack it in, coffee grinds end up everywhere. Like I don't have to clean up anything. Like that to me is one of the best parts of this. Like I squeeze it into the coffee mug, I add hot milk or hot water, and I'm done. Like I don't have to do
yeah,
anything else. I don't have to clean anything else either, which is fantastic.
yeah. I totally agree. So the price is an interesting one because people will always compare you to the cheapest possible solution, which is so cheap. You know, you will never ever reach that level. But yeah, if you compare it to a coffee at a coffee shop, then we're dirt cheap, basically. You know.
Yes.
Um, and also to your point with the waste, I think that's something we will talk about more in the future. It's kind of something we're kind of working on right now, is obviously the whole sustainability approach. So that's been something which has been super important for us since day one. We're just not screaming about it right now. You know, we're kind of keeping it on a low flame. Just we want to have everything sorted out. But if you think of it, our product basically has zero waste, right? Because the tube is fully recyclable. With the next production batch, we will have already fully recycled aluminium to use to start off with. So it's like that's going to even reduce our CO2 impact by like 70%. It's crazy.
That's amazing.
Um, so the only thing right now is this cap. That's something we're still working on. Like, how can we make that even recyclable? And the bean to cup ratio for coffee concentrate is much higher than grounded beans, because you know grounded beans is pretty inefficient if you think of it. Like you fill up your porter filter and then you kind of squish it and you put some water through it and that's that. But like you have to think about coffee concentrate is like they're using every single drop of that coffee in this
Right.
product. So It's very, very much more efficient than ground coffee. And we also like to say waste per cup is like almost zero. There's if you think about an espresso, yeah, they also have aluminium and it's also recycled. It's great, but you need a machine.
Right.
And the machine, I think I saw a number somewhere. It was like 40% of the impact of your coffee consumption is the machine.
Oh, wow.
So in our solutions, you don't need a machine. So it's like very often, as I mentioned, we're not shouting about it, but very often we're like, hey, actually, this thing is really sustainable. Like this is maybe one of the most sustainable ways to drink coffee right now.
It's amazing. The other question I wanted to make sure we addressed is that it is in a tube, which I know is, based on you and Philip going hiking, and it's easy and it's portable to carry. But the thing I was thinking about when I first saw the product is it's interesting that it doesn't come in a tub like butter would, right? Where you would take a scoop and then plop it into the cup that way.
Right.
Is it only because of the hike, or is it because in the US, we don't use tubes for anything other than toothpaste for the most part? Is there a reason behind the tube outside of being able to carry it on a hike or for ultra runners type of thing, skiers?
I mean, the tube, first of all, I think it's just such an amazing product format. Like I'm a product designer, and for me, it's just like such an honest, clean way to kind of package your product. That's kind of point one. But the tube allows us to preserve the product, the coffee really, really well, because the surface that kind of gets air is tiny.
Yeah.
Versus a tub, you open it up and the whole thing is exposed to air. That's definitely point one. And yeah, it's definitely like there's so many, the portability is definitely one. And we were also looking at, for example, it's like squishy, how do they call it in English, like pouches.
Yep.
Sprout pouches, I think they're called. We were also looking at those, but like none of them had like a recyclable aluminum material. So yeah, for us it was just like, that was like the initial idea. That's where like this everything came from, was like coffee in a tube. And yes, in the US, nothing comes in tubes, but it's crazy. In Europe, like especially I was in Sweden last week, at the supermarket, there's like shelves with like 50 products coming in tubes, from fish to meat to mayonnaise to mustard. Like everything comes in tubes there. And Swedish are like super outdoorsy, and they take everything with them when they go like to their huts, somewhere in the middle of nowhere. And it just seemed like the most fitting product format.
Yeah, I will say out of the questions that we've gotten into our DMs, the tube question has been one of the more prevalent ones outside of taste. It's like, so tell me, do you squeeze it? Like, is there a setting on it? And I'm like, go look at the video. You literally just squeeze it, falls into the cup. Like there's no sorcery here when it comes to the use of the product.
It's funny. We actually just, I think we already published this, a blog post about do's and don'ts with tubes. Because we did come, like for us, it's so obvious because we use these tubes every day, but there are some countries which just have no touch point with tubes whatsoever. So it's like, how to, don't squash it like this, kind of squash it from the top, and that kind of stuff. So
yeah, squeeze from the top and roll and scroll it down as you move along, so you get it all out at the bottom.
And don't play with it, all the time, because when you play with it and you open it, it's gonna be messy.
You're going to end up wearing most of it instead of getting it in the cup.
Yeah.
One of the other things you mentioned was, putting it on a Cliff Bar. Philip put it on a Cliff Bar maybe, and then putting it on a banana. One of the things that I did was mix it with, chocolate hazelnut spread, Nutella, and put it on an English muffin. And it's fantastic. Are there any other combinations that you have used the product with that we can share with our audience and go test out and get all these awesome videos for you guys?
Sure. So so my personal favorite, especially when I'm hiking or ski touring, is a Snickers and a roll on top, just because of the chocolate and I think there's caramel in there, and that just all like gives this like amazing taste explosion in your mouth, and it's just like this perfect energy boost. But also we have some recipes on our blog for power balls. Like I love to make them, so it's like, power ball with like dates and nuts and all kinds of stuff. And you put some normal in there, and you have the caffeine also covered, which is great. We have a friend of ours who made a recipe for sourdough bread with coffee inside.
No
I have to
way.
be honest, I haven't tried it yet because I just can't figure out how to make sourdough bread, but it looked incredible. And she also said it was really, really good. But then also what we often do when we have like little events in the evening, people don't want to drink coffee, we make espresso martinis.
Oh, excellent.
And that's like, it's super, super easy because you can make, like, for example, a big batch of coffee. So for example, you just put 2 liters of water. I don't know how that much is in US units, but it's a lot of water. And then you put an entire tube in there, you mix it, and you have like a huge batch of kind of cold brew type coffee.
Yeah.
And then you can really easily like make espresso martinis super fast. So we were, for example, a few months back, we were at an event in the Swiss Alps together with Yeti, actually, where we did like welcome drinks for free riders of the free ride World Tour finals. And we made, I think, about 150 espresso martinis in 1 hour. So it was just like bam, 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 bam. And people loved it. And so espresso martinis is always a winner. And then, yeah, there's endless ways. We heard customers actually use it as a meat rub.
Oh, yeah,
Because
that makes
apparently
sense.
the enzymes in the coffee make
Yeah.
the meat tender. Haven't tried that out yet, to be honest. But yeah, there's your imagination is your only limitation, I guess.
100%. I'm like, now that you've mentioned that, I'm already envisioning like a charcuterie board with an espresso
Yeah.
on the side of it.
Yeah.
The last question I want to ask you before I have you tell us where we can find the product is, you have a handful of videos on your Instagram account where you're at an event
Yep.
and ultra runners are running through and they're grabbing it. What was the reaction like from the ultra runners as they're pulling up to essentially this aid station and may or may not know what you guys are handing to them?
That was actually a really funny event because it was quite early in the year, and as you said, we basically prepared little bananas with like a squirt of no normal on top of it. And you know how it is at aid station, you just like run through, you just grab whatever you can find and stuff it in your mouth and continue running. And we would tell everybody like, "Hey, it's coffee on a banana," and people were like, "Wow, whatever," and just stuff it in their face. And it was so fun to see people's face first going like, they probably thought it was chocolate or something at
Right.
first, and then kind of the coffee flavor would kind of explode in their mouth and be like, "Is this coffee?" And you're like, "Yes," like, "Amazing," and they're like continue running, and it was really, really fun. It was a super fun event. Yeah,
I love it. I will be racing Javelina in October at the end of this
nice.
year, and it'll absolutely be with me when I head out there because, again, it tastes good and it has the caffeine kick plus the carbs from the sugar. And I know if
Yeah,
I put it on a triangle from Seven Summit Snacks, I'm going to get that chocolate coffee combination, and it'll be
absolutely.
wonderful when it's in the middle of the night.
Yep.
Thank you so much for joining me, Alex. Before I let you go, where can people find your product so that they can give it a test themselves?
So you can find us directly on our website, nonormal.com. We're also on Amazon since last week. So that's really big for us, brand new. Might be a bit tricky to find still, but if you go on our Instagram profile, we are no normal, and go in the link tree, there's like a link to the Amazon page. Yeah, and in the US, we're not in any retailers yet, but if you're in Europe, we are in various outdoor retailers in Switzerland, UK, and Germany.
Fantastic. We'll make sure we put it in the show notes, the link to the Amazon store, as well as the
Awesome.
link to the website. Alex, thank you so much for joining me. Really appreciate your time. I will be talking to you soon.
Awesome. Thanks a lot, Jason.
Thank you for joining me today on our special fireside chat. It was awesome to get to understand the concept behind No Normal Coffee, how you go from idea at the top of a mountain to production to celebrating your, at this point, almost 1 year in business and looking forward to the future. I really love the idea of doing some market research, but also keeping it simple and focusing on your why. I think that's a really important concept for entrepreneurs to make sure they focus on as they start to build out their own businesses. Thank you so much for joining us. We will be back next week at our normal time on Tuesday at 5 p.m. Pacific time, where we'll be joined by Christy D, who is going to be talking to us about her trip to Italy and getting a marathon run over there with her husband and future marathons going forward, plus some coaching tips and advice from her. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on the Fireside Chat on the Everyday Athlete Podcast Network.